Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
Joan. How are you,
Hi.
honey?
Good,
How are
Betsy.
you?
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay.
How's
Can you hear me? In the Zoom, you can hear me okay, good.
Yes,
Yep.
we can. Yes.
So I'm gonna start in a minute. People here can see you up on the screen, and after I introduce Ken, he'll sit here and you can all see him. You wanna- So well, let's start. If people come late, all they'll miss is my introduction. Actually, as a preface, Jack and Janet back there, we were meeting with them to look for a candidate to run against Rick Scott, and not to put any pressure on Ken. And I said, you know, there was this guy.
Oh, by the way, this is about. I got something.
By the way, Terry says hi. She's very sorry she couldn't make it when she heard. But anyway, we all. I said there was this guy named Ken we saw last year. I'm looking for his name. I said, you know what? I'll email or I'll text Terry Rizzo because she'll know. And she texts me back while we're sitting here on a Sunday, and then we decided let's invite him, and he was happy to come. So he's currently, I looked up, U.S. Public Sector Outreach Director for Longevity Partners. He was a two-term Miami City Commissioner, and he ran in the primary along with, I guess, 8 other people and Val Demings, and then dropped out of that. But you were going to win. You had the go-ahead for the congressional seat that Donna Shalala had lost, and at the last minute, after getting the go-ahead, Annette Taddeo dropped out of the governor's race, and she got the slot to run, won the primary, and then lost to the Republican. So before we begin, I just want to say a few words about last November's elections. We've talked about this. I wrote an article about it, that we ridicule Republicans who continually vote against their economic interests and even their lives. But what about the Democrats who do the same by not coming out to vote? Last November, this came out last week, I think, in the Sun Sentinel. 49% of registered Democrats cast ballots in last November, versus 64% of Republicans. That's a 15% gap. In Palm Beach County, it was slightly better, but 53% of Democrats voted versus 63% of Republicans. That's a 10-point gap, and that's shameful. Some of the Democrats who failed to vote may have thought they were sending a message to the leadership. A lot of people were not happy with Charlie Crist. I thought he was a terrific candidate, a really decent guy, but there were some people who said, I'm not going to vote for a guy who was a Republican. You know, doesn't matter that it was 15 years early. And other people thought that their voting wouldn't make a difference, that it was a foregone conclusion that DeSantis was going to win. But 2.6 million Democrats didn't vote, and DeSantis won by 1.5 million, and Rubio won by 1.1 million. So it would have made a difference. And there really is no such thing as not voting. because not voting is a form of voting. Every Democrat who failed to cast a ballot for Charlie Crist and Val Demings effectively doubled the impact of every ballot cast for Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio. And as for sending a message, I think we could file that under bite off nose, comma, spite face. That's not to say that the Democratic leadership and activists couldn't have done a better job going out knocking on doors way sooner than we did and more often than we did. We couldn't have done a better job of communicating what was at stake, however clear it should have been to anyone paying attention. Those are errors we can't afford to repeat 2024. But perhaps the biggest problem is one that Bill Clinton identified back in the 90s, and our chair, Mindy Cope, likes to quote that Republicans fall in line while Democrats fall in love. And
I've heard about the evidence that we have.
But Mindy,
There might have been a crime pursuant to what your
can you mute yourself, Charles, or David? Mute.
Can't understand you right now. Two people talking. Two people were talking. We
I
couldn't
know.
understand what you said.
So what did Bill Clinton say again?
Okay, so what Bill Clinton said back in the 90s is that Republicans fall in line while Democrats fall in love. You know, and well, that brings me back to Ken Russell, because when we heard him at a DEC meeting last year, and this is not a royal we, it's everyone I spoke to afterwards, were blown away. So I've said this before. I hope I'm not setting Ken up, and I don't know what his future plans are. But let me finish by suggesting that if he is our candidate for whatever office, Democrats won't have to be told to fall in line, because they'll fall in love.
Wow. I'm gonna read everybody, and then I'm gonna unmute you.
And we also, if you're going to stand, Ken, let me do that speaker. So,
Been in traffic for the last 2 hours.
right.
I'll stay.
Okay. Is he now? You know what? My screen is broadcasting, David, and it's got a bunch of it's got Hollywood squares on it.
It's okay.
Why? It's not okay because
Turn it toward him.
no, he's showing right here. But oh,
I can't get rid of the fact that the camera is.
Hi, Arlene. Hey, Mark.
mhm.
Hey, Roberta.
You're good.
Hey, Susan.
Okay. All right. Is it full screen for everyone that's watching? Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for hosting this here, because I can finally say I made it to Congress.
Yeah.
One way or the other. But no, really, thank you for having me. And I'd like to start by saying thank you for being here and doing everything that you do. Most people just grumble or go to sleep at night, or maybe they'll turn on the news and get a little bit upset. Some of them will show up to vote, but not nearly enough actually get out and mobilize. And you're the heart, the lungs, the spine, everything of this party comes down to the local level. And if we're gonna bounce back in Florida, it's gonna be because of folks like you. So thank you. Not even on an election year. Thank you for doing what needs to be done. We're gonna have a very rough couple of cycles. It's not gonna be an immediate silver bullet. There is no U-turn. This is a ground up game. And so it's these off seasons where we can plant the seeds that hopefully we can reap what we sow when it counts. So my name is Ken Russell. I am not running for office, despite what, yes, but yeah. but if I do, Kathy's gonna be my campaign manager. She's already saying very nice things. But you can tell I'm not running for office because I'm not asking you to give me money. I have no flyers and I'm not wearing a tie. You know, I'm back in my private life. I was a City of Miami commissioner for 2 terms. I served 7 years on the rough and tumble Miami Commission. And it is a rough and tumble third world politic in the city of Miami. It's very refreshing to be here with you, people who care about democracy and are willing to do something about it. Just yesterday, I sat in court for 4 hours. I'm not a lawyer. I was a surfboard salesman before I went into politics, but I was in court yesterday as a witness in a federal trial on corruption against the city of Miami and one of my fellow commissioners, who is being sued for $3 million for abuse of power and shutting down businesses that opposed him in an election. Another of my fellow commissioners, I was subpoenaed to testify against in a deposition for corruption, quid pro quo shakedown of developers for money for votes. This is Miami politics. And somehow I fell into it because of a contaminated park in front of my house. I got upset. I organized my neighborhood. The city wasn't doing anything about it. We got the park cleaned up. And that opened my eyes to the possibility of what could be done at the local level of politics. So I decided to run for local office, having no idea what I was getting into. And this is in 2015. I started knocking doors and making t-shirts, and me and some friends were just, you know, asking questions of the neighbors. And I said, you know, that's an amazing campaign. Nobody's ever come around just asking us what we need. I said, no, I really don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm here to ask you what I should do. And they said, well, we wish more politicians would do that. And I ended up winning one of the most important and powerful seats in South Florida. Of the 5 commission seats in Miami, and by the way, it's the largest city in the country with only 5 commissioners to manage $1 billion budget. It's way too much power for way too few people. District 2, the commission seat that I won was Coconut Grove, Brickell, downtown, Edgewater, all the waterfront of the city, 80–90% of the city's revenue in terms of real estate and development. Of course, all of our exposure to storm surge and sea level rise, also some of the poorest neighborhoods in need of affordable housing and infrastructure. So I fell into this just caring about environmental contamination, not really knowing much about it, and surrounded myself with good folks and got to work. And over the last 8 years, in the minority on that commission, by the way, with a majority of angry conservative folks, I was able to pass the state's strongest, to this day, strongest of any city, environmental legislation, police oversight legislation, affordable housing legislation, while in the minority as a Democrat. And it's not a magic formula. I mean, we do wear nonpartisan positions. We don't wear our party on our sleeve, which makes it a little bit easier, but everybody knows what song everybody's dancing to. And it's a very punitive, very angry, very vindictive politic in the city of Miami. It was a great proving ground and a great microcosm of what's happening at the federal level. But also it's a ray of hope to show you that you can get things done, even while in the minority. You can get things done, even with people with whom you disagree. It was surreal for me to be sitting on the stand yesterday with one of my former fellow commissioners at the defense table, and you know, just looking at at least the judicial system doing what it's supposed to do and the checks and balances. But to think that this really happened, that this is our system of government, where those in power have the power to get away with things they shouldn't, and they still get reelected. They still get reelected. So that led me on this journey to wonder what I should do next at this point. I nearly served the end of my second term. I got reelected overwhelmingly. I was really enjoying the job, but I wanted to be as effective as I could possibly be, not only for my community, but for the country. And if I could scale what I was able to do at a local level, and Miami's no small town, if I could scale that and be a part of a larger organization, you know, whether it's Congress or otherwise, I want to do everything I can. It's like Pearl Harbor, sign me up, right? We're in a crucial time where if you can make a difference, you drop everything and you do it. And in my infinite wisdom, decided to run for federal office, decided to put a target on Marco Rubio. One of the, I mean, he's very tenured, he's very powerful, he's actually popular electorally, although not popular personally. And he gets reelected. But I thought, you know what, he started as a West Miami commissioner, and for those of you who remember when he first had his rise, he went around, the state in a pickup truck and surprised a bunch of folks. I said, what if I did that with good ideas? What if I did that on the right side of democracy? And so I set out on a 67 county tour. And it was a couple of years of grueling, grinding campaigning. And I thought I was doing pretty well. I had a great following. Suddenly on TikTok, I had nearly 500,000 followers. TikTok's a bad word these days, but we were sure having a good time, meeting our electorate there. But going everywhere we could, traveling the whole state. And I was mostly talking about water quality, affordable housing, the rent, and it was actually resonating with folks a lot. We talk about these existential democratic issues. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we need to fight and why we need to win. But I had a philosophy that in order to win, those weren't necessarily the issues that will get us the biggest amount of votes in Florida, unfortunately. Because I have relatives, and I'm sure you do too. I have friends, I'm sure you do or did, who are on the other side of the aisle that you cannot reason with. There is no logic. You can't shake them with the fear of losing democracy. They've drank that Kool-Aid, and much like historic times of long ago that we never thought would return, very reasonable and rational people are going down a path we would never have dreamed. We say, wait a second, you're not a bad person, you're not a stupid person, but here you are following really bad philosophies, things that we don't believe in as Americans, but somehow they've convinced you that to defend what is American in their mind, you must take this path. So I realized these existential democratic issues weren't my path to connecting with a mathematical majority. And it wasn't about going to the center. It wasn't about how do I make myself muddy and vanilla tapioca, wishy-washy, happy to everybody. It was what are the issues that we all care about and can agree on. And for me, the rent, it's only gotten worse, and this was 2 years ago. Water quality and restoration of the Everglades. You grab any conservative, and they may have their own motivations, whether it's fishing or hunting or whatever, but they want Florida's water quality. They want, to have affordable rent. There's so many things we do agree on. And so when people have given up on Florida saying, oh, it's all red now, it's no longer purple, it's certainly not blue. I believe we are a progressive state with a progressive electorate. And when you look at the ballot, they agree. They vote yes on medical marijuana. They vote yes on former felons voting rights. They vote yes on $15 an hour. Yet in those very same races, on those very same ballots, they vote Republicans.
I don't get it.
Well, if it's not the issue, maybe it's the message. And if it's not the message, maybe it's the candidates. I don't know the answer, but we're getting it wrong. We know we're right on the issues. And your Delray Democrat is full of policy that is so good. It's so strong and educational. It tells us, everything that's happening right now and where all the bad votes are going, where DeSantis is heading, where we should be. And those are the things we need to arm ourselves with. But I don't believe it's the magic pill or silver bullet that's going to change the minds of the other side, or Democrats we've lost, or Republicans we could gain back in order to have a majority of the state elect good people statewide and nationwide. Now, maybe my philosophy was wrong. Maybe it was right. I don't think it got truly tested because Val Demings jumped in the race and she was a force of nature that I knew I could not beat. Just having no name recognition, I'd raised a couple $1 million, but it was nothing near what was needed to win statewide for a federal race. And I don't blame her for not winning that race. We all lost every major seat in the state. This was a wave coming across. So I don't hold the party responsible. I don't hold the candidates responsible. This is a moment we're in right now, and we need to reconcile with that and figure out where do we go next. So I decided to drop out and support Val Demings, and of course voted for her. But I decided to run in my local race, which was Congressional District 27. But it was a little bit too little too late. And even though the party gave me a clear path at the time because they didn't have a candidate for that race, I was gaining all of their support. And I was going to take on Maria Elvira Salazar, who is our current representative in that area now, unfortunately. But Annette Taddeo decided to get out of the governor's race and got the blessing of the party through Charlie Crist, et cetera, and just was a cakewalk into that. And it really was an eye-opener for me. It was an eye-opener for me about the real difficulties and process of politics, how hard it is to get your voice heard, how hard it is to get earned media and press, how hard it is to fight the machine, even when it's your own sometimes. And I thought I could jump line. I thought, you could, if you had a good message and connected well, you just had to get out there and meet enough folks. And I won't say I was disenchanted. I would say I was educated. And so I did not win that race, and I decided to step out of politics for the time, and I got a great job in climate change issues. I'm a consultant now that works with anyone who's trying to make their buildings greener, from solar panels to EV charging stations, and anyone from a city government to a state that wants to create a net zero carbon pathway so that they're emitting less greenhouse gases. That's what our company does. We're the largest in the world that does it. I'm their US representative for the public sector. If a school wants to go net zero and put on solar panels, I help them do it. I may actually be reducing our carbon footprint as a country more now as a private citizen than I would have been in Congress. But God, I would have loved to have been a part of the Inflation Reduction Act getting passed. Now that's a game changer for our environment. They shouldn't have called it the Inflation Reduction Act. It's just such a game changer for climate change initiatives in the environment. I would run again. I would serve. But I think this is a good time to step out and try to be a normal person again. I think not enough politicians do that. And they end up, consuming their own BS enough that they start to believe it and what all the lobbyists around them tell them, and they think they're so great. You got to get out and be a normal person and make a paycheck like a normal person. Or if you run a company, know what it's like to have people responsible to you that you pay a paycheck to, and that they have to survive on that. You have to know what it's like to pay a mortgage and do a normal calendar. And I think most politicians lose sight of that if they ever had it. So this is a good time for me to be a human being again. And I don't know if and when I'll run again. So that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I was invited to be here, and the fact that you all care enough to figure out the path forward, I'm here to be a part of it. I'm here to support Nikki Fried as our new Democratic Party chair. I talked with her for about a half an hour on the road up in the car from Miami, and she's doing great. She's very excited. She's wearing every hat in the office right now, from fundraising to organizing to you name it. But I have to admit, when she was first stepped into that race, I thought, right now she is such a firebrand, and she just came off a big race, and she does have more name rec of any Democrat in the state right now. But gosh, what I really want right now is an organizing team, a grassroots, on the ground, like, the best DECs and clubs in the state getting together, and just, this machine that's going to be ready for when the tide does shift, that we'll catch it. We'll catch the wave, and we'll have everything we need. And I thought, is she that person? And she actually called me right then when she was running and seeking my support. And I said, well, tell me what your plan is. And she was surrounding herself with the best leaders of the best clubs and DECs around the state to help her do exactly that. And I spent yesterday after court with the chairman of the Miami-Dade Democrat DEC, and he's very encouraged by her. He said he's hearing all the right things she's saying and doing all the right moves to put this machine in place. So I said, Nikki, Chairwoman, what do I need to tell Delray Democrats? What's the message right now? And she needs help, but at the grassroots level. She said exactly what you said earlier. We haven't knocked doors in years. We need an outreach team. We need an activation team. And she's got a good plan. So I think we need to support her, both, morally, financially, vocally. She's going to take some hits. She got arrested a couple weeks ago, and yeah, I'll clap for that, because it's crazy that that's what it takes. The news she got, her ability to say her message about Ron DeSantis right now was amplified by that. And it wasn't a stunt. She and Lauren Book didn't go there to get arrested. They went there just to support the protesters. And they think that by arresting, they're gonna shut them down. I don't know where they've not listened to protest 101 throughout history. They gave her a voice, and she was on international news, much less Joy Reid and MSNBC for the next week, being able to talk about who Ron DeSantis really is to the nation. Because they haven't seen him yet. We've seen him now for a few years. We know who he is.
He's flown too close to the sun. I said that he is Icarus, and he's going down. I mean, and it's happening now. He's become an object of ridicule in the national.
It's very interesting. I mean, Republicans will eat their own. And where just a few months ago, everybody was saying, uh-oh, he's the super Donald Trump because he's the Donald Trump, but he's sane, he's a brain. And, for all of his efforts right now, and Donald Trump being indicted, Donald Trump is surging in the polls.
Yeah.
Paul Krugman said the other day that the reason the big donors are backing away is because of all of the culture wars.
Yeah.
And he said that they thought that they were getting, Donald Trump with the brain. They thought they were getting a charlatan, and instead they got a fanatic. And they don't want a fanatic because that's gonna lose elections.
Yeah. It's interesting. They don't know where they're heading either. They've got to figure theirs out. We've got to figure ours out. And at the end of the day, it's sad, but it's a numbers game. That's democracy. And we have to have one more than they have to get the state flipped around and support the nation being, continuing to stay in
I
democratic
think it's
control.
11,000 something.
Find me exactly. But DeSantis and his philosophy, it's shifted over time. I mean, he's now that he's on his trajectory for the presidency, he's saying different things and he's trying to, shift a bit. But Nikki's been there. She is the only Democrat who's been in the cabinet with him for years and stood up to him every step of the way and was vocal every step of the way. And she's now the one who can say to the rest of the country, oh, you think everyone wants to be like Florida because of how free he's made it and how whatever. You want to know what our insurance situation is like? You want to know what our rent situation is like? You think he's the champion of the Everglades? You want to know what our drinking water situation is like?
But has Florida ever elected a woman for governor? No.
Well, she didn't make it for governor, but
Has any woman?
she's now our torchbearer for the party in the state.
Yeah,
And I think she's going to do a great job
yeah, I agree.
because she's not backing down. That was what she said. She said,
She's
tell him I'm not backing down. I'm just getting started.
We watched the debate for the chair,
Yeah.
and there were some good people
Yeah.
in the race. And I wasn't a big fan going in
Mhm.
because I didn't like the way the primary played out at the end,
Mhm.
with the glossy flyers that came questioning whether Charlie Crist was really in favor of women's rights,
Mhm.
etc. But of the people on that screen, she was like head and shoulders above, and all of us that watched that, we had a vote. That's who we voted for because she had a plan. She was the most articulate. She's really smart. So
She is. And you need your champion for the moment and in the right place. And I think this is her moment and she's in the right place. Charlie didn't make it for governor. I mean, I think he was kind of playing the card of why did we elect Joe Biden? Joe Biden, as a centrist as he is, he's implemented some of the most progressive policies we could have dreamed of. But where 15 years ago, we would have never pictured him being our president, flub after flub and always with his foot in his mouth. And I mean, he's turned out to be a great president. And what history will say, I don't know how memorable a president he'll be, but we know that he saved us from a second term of Trump.
Yeah.
And I don't know that another candidate could have done that in that moment.
I wrote 2 articles, twice, maybe 3 times. I wrote an article with the title, "Could Charlie Crist be our Joe Biden?"
Right.
And I posted it on the FDP leaders Facebook page, and I got nothing but slams back. Yeah, he could be our Joe Biden. He could lose Florida again, or and I'd never vote for Charlie Crist. He was a Republican.
Well, maybe it's indicative of the moment we're in the state we're in, where nationally we needed that stable, that sense of, Joe Biden talking about the soul of America and that bringing people together and the goodness. And, Charlie is also a very elegant, good person in that sense. But maybe that's not what Florida's looking for right now. Maybe Florida's looking for a fighter.
He's going against.
Ken, I've got a question. It looks to me like the Republicans are gonna blow themselves up in this 2024 election. I mean,
Yes. There's an observation that the Republicans might blow themselves up in this 2024, and it's the civil war we would dream of, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know which would be easier to beat, a Ron DeSantis or a Donald Trump in this moment. I believe if Biden did it once, Biden could do it again.
Yeah.
my concern about Ron DeSantis, he's young, and age will be an issue in any election. We've got, Joe at 80 and, someone at, I don't know what Ron is, he's in his 50s, I think, or late 40s.
He's in his 40s. It certainly is a factor, and Joe's holding it together great. For his age, I mean, I find him to be incredibly energetic and keeping it together, but this is a year and a half away. I don't know who we've got in the wings. And I really like, I won't.
Robert Kennedy Jr.
Oh, I know.
I won't say I'm a Joe Biden guy, but we'll just. I am a Joe Biden guy. I'm very proud to have met him a few times and supported him. I feel good if things stay on the path we're on right now for next year at the presidential level. In Florida, it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
Pardon me, Ken, one other question.
Yes.
What do you think the chance is that the big money Republicans, they don't want Trump? They definitely don't want Trump because he's probably the loser. Is there a chance they might try to form a third party and do something in that range?
Interesting. I don't see it happening. I think they're sharp enough to know their strength in numbers and the weakness of division. And I think if Trump ends up being the torchbearer, they'll all jump back on board once again. They'll all fall in line.
They are.
They are now. They're having some issues, and DeSantis is trying to pull, and he's not being as successful as he wanted. But this is the civil war we had hoped for, actually. So I don't know. You're right. I mean, they're definitely falling apart and imploding. So,
Ken, I have a question for you when you were on Biden. What do you think about Kamala Harris?
I like Kamala. I've met her several times, actually, and I supported her originally when she was running for president. I was on her national finance committee. I find her to be very energetic, dynamic, and young. But she has been painted with such a rough brush since she got in, and she hasn't had a chance to really shine. And so she's bruised right now. And so they're finding right now they're using the abortion issue. And she is taking the lead on that. Joe Biden is actually staying quite quiet on that and letting Kamala take the lead on that issue. If she finds her moment and she steps up, she would be the natural, as the vice president, elected vice president of our country. She would be the natural person to take over if Joe decides for whatever reason that he can't or shouldn't do it. But right now, I think it's all Joe all day long, all the way, and I'm with it. Yeah,
She was great right after the Alito leaks when she came to Tallahassee to speak. I really felt her strength and her authenticity about the abortion.
For sure. So, yes.
I'm pretty new to this state, and something I don't understand, and maybe you can explain, is how, like, Ron DeSantis can all of a sudden change all these laws and, banning books, banning abortion. What's the other big thing he did?
Sure, the book banning.
Allowing guns. Like, how does this how can we prevent these things from happening?
No, he's because he's very politically astute at state politics. And Roberta, we're going to take questions one at a time, if you could. We've got a lot of folks in the room as well that have their hands right here. But Roberta, I definitely want to answer you. He has the support of a very strong majority of Republicans in the state legislature. So if he snaps his fingers, they're all jumping. It's also something Trump was very good at doing, is whipping votes and getting people in line through intimidation. Right? Not through coalition building within the party, but if you cross them, you were on the wrong side of them, that you got bullied. You could lose your seat, you could lose all your committee chair, seats, assignments, etc. So when he wants something done, they're getting it done for him, even when they know it won't stand up to legal challenge. They just want the headline to boost him up, to show the nation that he's the most conservative guy in the country and that he's taken Florida in that direction. It's scary. And once again, we will be relying on the courts to be that check and balance on what's right and wrong and what's legal, despite what elected leaders vote to do.
And he's appointed the judges on the Supreme Court, and Trump's appointed the judges on the 11th Circuit.
Yeah.
The Amendment 4 thing, if Hillary had been elected, we would have Amendment 4, the ruling by Hinkle that said it was unconstitutional poll tax. That would have stood because the 11th Circuit would have affirmed. So that's the one hitch in the courts doing something.
The checks and balances don't always work, but in the case of Trump, many of the people that he appointed went against him when they realized he was undermining democracy, that he was truly lying to steal votes. So I'm optimistic. I always am, and we have to be. But more than anything, we have to do the hard work. So I was very honest when I said, I'm not asking you for money to give me money. I'm asking on behalf of Nikki Fried, and she's not asking much. She's got a campaign right now to get everyone to pitch in $5 a month. If you can give $5 a month to the state party, and you should give much more to the Delray Democrats. But if you can pitch in $5 a month to floridadems.org, that really, what that does, it invests you into the system of mobilization that they'll be doing over the next cycle. And it's very important that you're tied into that you're vested into that, and that you're receiving all the information so you hear the call to action when it comes, and this whole club will be ready. So it'd be great if each of you could floridadems.org and just hit that $5 pledge per month. So that would make Nikki very happy with me that I said that to you. Yes.
Can I ask my question?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Is it Susan?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. What was your name?
Janet.
Janet. Not even close.
Who is your favorite president, alive or not, and why? And what happened in Miami that we can avoid here?
Wow. My favorite president, and it's not just because I like them so much, but because of the impact they had, was Franklin Roosevelt.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And look at that. But what the reason is it's my favorite president may surprise you. One of the greatest presidents with big sweeping moves that did big things for the country that we still have today was also the president that declared Executive Order 1906. No, this is Franklin. And this is the internment of the Japanese Americans during World War II.
Yeah.
My mother is full Japanese, came over from Japan in the 60s. She wasn't here during World War II, but I'm a Japanese American. I am the first Japanese American to ever be elected in the city of Miami. And I didn't even know my true history because we don't teach it very well, actually, on what Americans did to other Americans. Not to visiting Japanese, not to the enemy, but to people born in America just because they looked like the enemy. Fear, he wasn't a racist president, he was a very good president. But fear during wartime and the pressure of a scared public can make bad things happen very quickly. And people were, over 150,000 Japanese Americans were taken to these internment camps. I was chosen
They did not do to Germany.
Exactly.
Interesting point. Interesting point, but that decision that he made is still called good law. It was challenged in the Supreme Court and it was not struck down. And that Supreme Court decision to uphold that executive order was used by Donald Trump when he implemented the anti-Muslim sentiment and the Muslim ban. So I say he's my favorite because such a great person can still falter.
Yeah.
And that lesson is something that I speak about quite often to teach, that even good people can make very big mistakes. And we need to learn from those lessons. And that's the reason we need the history of our mistakes to be taught, not to pretend that we're a perfect country that never makes mistakes, that we're some sort of exceptionalism, but that we have inherent flaws in our system, our history, and we need to learn from them, so as not to repeat them. And your other question was about Miami.
What happened?
Miami's a wreck.
Yeah.
Miami is interesting, actually. So another cultural situation, it's probably the only city in the entire country where more than 50% of our population are born in another country. That a foreign population came in, not only bringing culture and music and art and food and language, but also took over the politic from 1980 on, from the Mariel boat lift on. The Cuban American population in Miami has altered. And some would say for better, some would say for worse. I mean, I love the flavor of Miami. I speak Spanish fluently. I love Little Havana. I love the strength of an immigrant community. But what has also happened, some of the bad things that were brought over were a third world politic. Now, when the rest of the country started, the rest of the country's Republicans started talking about socialism and communism about 3 years ago, everybody kind of laughed, because we know that's not us. And they were starting to throw that, paint us with that brush. But in Miami, I see it every day on a city commission where we condemn communism and talk about Fidel Castro in our land use and zoning issues. I've seen attorneys get kicked out of City Hall because their website has a page that teaches clients how to do legal business in Cuba under the Obama opening. And so when you campaign in Miami, they'll put pictures of me in a beret with a hammer and sickle on it. This has happened for years. The effectiveness of the anti-communist, anti-socialist rhetoric and how that wakes up the anger of conservatives and mobilizes them to vote is incredibly effective, unfortunately. And that started to spread nationwide. Miami's had that going on for a very long time. And despite this community of exiles that fled Cuba, fled communism, those in power still realize that they can mobilize their community using those same rhetorical elements. And it's a real shame.
We want to get back that social security.
It's a real shame. Oh, no. And they're the biggest ones of massive food handouts and rent subsidies. And
What is that called?
it's called control of your electorate. And that plus in Miami, all the local elections are on odd years, not even years. And so there's always a low turnout. When I won a seat with 100,000 residents, 6,000 voters turned out.
Well, the
For-
last one was the worst.
Sounds like Delray Beach.
Yes.
Yeah, the last one was the worst.
So,
Sounds like every small city in the country.
yeah, but I found it's possible to knock doors and get things done, even in a big city. And so I'm even optimistic for Miami.
May I?
Yes.
From an educational point of view, you give students a test. They give you a numerical, give you a number. But with good education, with good teachers, they use it as a tool to analyze and evaluate. Now, our question should be, how come 70 million people voted for Trump?
Really,
How come someone like DeSantis could get reelected?
really.
And the answer is that you can talk to me, I can talk to you, and that's what you call singing to the choir. But there's a whole bunch of people out there that just don't know.
The country on DeSantis is to look at what he's not doing as Fort Lauderdale floods, and we're trying to fix infrastructure
Right.
and worry about storm surge and sea level rise and climate change issues, what he's not doing with regard to insurance rates. And that's going to affect even the wealthiest and the most Republican of folks. I've met people in Miami who've had their insurance completely dropped and they have multi-million-dollar homes.
Your social security.
Yes, and so will folks start to vote their interests? I don't know. But what I do know is we'll be ready in terms of activation, registration, mobilization, communication, that whatever those candidates' message is when the time comes, we will have the machine ready to help them get it out and help people
You
get to
know,
the
I'm
polls.
sorry, right now, we should be, preparing, and I call it, Michael and I were talking about the bullets.
Yeah, well, David wrote the article,
David.
the Democratic
The contract for Florida is incredible. It's
And
great.
the stuff that you were saying, that's, there's those.
Dr. Robert Watson, gave me not too long ago, a whole list of Rubio's voting record.
Oh, I bet it was all.
Every time something came up having to do with guns and violence, he voted no.
Really?
On the sheet, it indicated the law, what it meant, and what happened because Rubio said no. And this is the stuff we should be giving people all the time. We should be doing it now with Rick Scott because he's coming up in 20 years.
Yeah.
You don't need a permit to carry a gun in Florida now.
Well, that, you know, so many people, they don't, they're not gonna feel badly about that
Well-
until they go into a supermarket and somebody takes that.
I
And
think
then
we should all
with
buy
stand your-
those
with
bullet
stand your
guns.
ground, people are gonna walk around with guns shooting each other.
That's right, that's right.
Well,
As long as they shoot each other.
Shoot each other.
So, of course, you're right, but right doesn't necessarily win elections. I tell my daughter, she's 9 and she rides her bike. I said, when you get to that intersection, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. You may be right, but you'll still be dead if you pull out in front of that truck.
Right.
So being right isn't enough,
Yeah.
right? So we gotta be street smart. And I don't know the answer to that. I know we gotta stop being reactionary to the bait that the Republicans put out there for us, and you're a communist and no, we're not, and
No,
you
the
know.
answer to that is, Marco, your mama was what was a socialist. She was on Social Security, right? You know, I mean, every program that came out when Roosevelt introduced.
I'm sorry, but if you think pointing out the hypocrisy of Republicans to Republicans is enough to get them to vote against Republicans, it's simply, if I believe if we are to carry a message forward, it's the message of what we believe in and what we stand for as Democrats. And that is a universal message because we are fighting for the little guy, and that is everybody. That is the majority. That is the majority of this state. That is the majority of the voters in this state, and they agree with us. So if they believe us and we're loud enough, we may be able to gain that coalition. But I know it's not working to simply be defensive against their attacks or take their bait on the wokeism and the hyperbole. You know,
It's not Republicans, it's the NPAs. We need the NPAs.
yes,
Republic.
fastest growing party in the country. Yeah.
You know, if they don't see it by now,
What do
we
you
gotta,
hear
they're gonna
about,
lie to NPAs. We gotta win them.
Yes.
what do you hear about them changing the voter rules? That college students have to go back to their residence to vote. Rather than vote, you know, at the college they're attending.
They're doing everything they can to conveniently limit those who
I mean,
might
that's
vote
the
against them.
clip we need
Yeah,
really bad.
and they know that. That's the conversation this week is
They're
that
mostly
that
Democrats.
Gen Z is a danger to the Republican Party. So they're coming up with new strategies on how to demobilize Gen Z. It's very smart on their part. That's their game. So
It's evil.
they know that if every eligible voter truly votes, then they lose. They know that's the case. Yeah.
6.5 million Floridians did not vote for last year.
Mm.
Registered non-voters.
Yeah, yeah.
People are disenchanted. They're
6.5 million did not vote.
well, whoever's doing the polling for Ron DeSantis is telling them to double down on this hyperbole. And it's not the majority of us, but it is the majority who's turning out to vote. I'm sorry, I'm ignoring the dark back.
Ken, who do you think has a possibility against Rick Scott?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. It's very early days yet.
He's got money, but he's got, he's got Mitch McConnell against him. He got someone running against him in the primary now.
He does?
Who's bringing up the whole Medicare fraud again. I mean, it didn't work the last 2 times, but,
He's the worst.
He's a money machine, though. It's a formidable, even though we know he's the wrong person and nobody should like him and he's totally flawed.
Oh, he has a
He should be disqualified, but he still wins and he's got this massive coffer and the Republicans fall in line, like you say. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Most of it.
I don't-
Taxpayers and
I don't
firms.
see a shining star that's just ready to take him on with the money and strength and the current wave of the Republican Party.
Oh, he's the-
Michael, who's running against him?
They don't know yet.
Oh, against Scott?
Good, Scott.
Yes, didn't you?
Yeah, just some businessman with a lot of money, they said, and the primary, but, you know, he.
So I've worked on a bunch of campaigns and I worked for the FTP and I worked for like Lois Frankel, but I have to say, like, I feel like the party, I'm glad there's a new chair, but like it definitely needs a complete overhaul of how things have gone and went. Because there's been a lot of, I think, mistakes have been made over the past, I'd say since 2018, since I've been part of it and been part of the cycles. Just the messaging part has always been a problem for the party. People like don't know FTP. Oh, FTP is who? Oh, who's running? Oh, who's this? Like the messaging is a huge, huge problem that never gets down to the actual people who are running for state house and state senate. I know in 2018, when I worked on a Jim Montpelier's HD89 campaign, I can tell you, no one knew of who Jim Montpelier was until I and a few others were actually going around and getting his name out there.
Yeah.
But, you know, Nelson at that point was running too, and no one mentioned Nelson as well, like during that, like, I just feel like there's just been such a disconnect with what FTP should have done and what they need to be doing. They need to be doing voter registration now. They need to be organizing now. They need to be getting people already like getting excited to vote. People don't know who FTP is. People don't know that there's
Right.
no chair.
It's
People
true.
have no clue what's going on.
And they don't-
It's true. And people don't need to know them by name, but they need to feel the work that's being done.
Exactly.
It needs to touch them so that they know who to vote for. They know what's going on in their district. And that's not happening. It's,
And that hasn't happened in, I'd say, years.
no, the easy thing to do is just drop the press releases every week that attack the other side, go on social media. But if you're not doing that, you know, bench building and the
Exactly.
that were there taking part at the time. I was a city elected. I said, I asked Terry, how do I help? Sign me up. I got in selfishly because I wanted to start a municipal program. As a municipal elected, I wanted to help other Democrats around the state run for city office and get in and build that broad bench. She says, well, if you raise the money for it, you can do it. I went and I raised $500,000. I got us a full-time executive director. At the time was Lisa Peth. And we got hundreds of Democrats elected around the state. We created a candidate toolkit and a campaign blueprint. And the party did a great job for that department. But even that has faltered. And when Manny Diaz ran, I said, listen, I will support you if you make this municipal victory program part of your permanent budget, because I cannot hand them out, fundraise for it every year. It's got to be part of what we do is build the bench. You know, who's going to run for state office if you don't have people at the local level?
Exactly.
And all those things. And it really didn't, you know, we thought Manny was the solution because he was a Cuban-born, you know, centrist, business-friendly Democrat who could combat the communist message. And it's exactly what he is, but it didn't do a thing, you know, and so being reactionary to their accusations isn't the solution. Being proactive on what we need to do as a party is where we need to be, in my opinion. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other comments or questions, or should I just play yo-yo or?
Joan Katz has a question. Her hand's been up for a while. And then Martin afterwards.
Hi, thanks, Arlene. Can I have a feeling that maybe 2024 is your time? You've been able to get across to us in a relatively short period of time, your values, your messages. We're looking for people like you. And coming up within the next few months, Palm Beach County is going to be having a candidate forum and a potential candidate forum. So any candidate with either a glimmer of hope for something in 2024, we would like to invite. So we'll be sending you an invitation. I hope you'll agree to join us.
I don't want to start rumors that I'm running. You know, I don't want to be a career politician. I don't want to run just to run. I want to run when I believe I can win. I want to run when I can be effective and in a position that would fulfill me. So I'm not there. I have to be honest. And I'm going to do everything I can to help the Democratic Party be successful. I don't know at this moment that it's being a candidate and the face that may win or lose in this next cycle, but being a part of the building blocks, you can count on me. I'm here.
Terrific, thank you. Also, there's going to be voter registration training for everybody that's listening in at the Delray office coming up shortly. You'll be hearing more about it. And also phone banking, like we did for the Obama campaign. That was so very successful. So we're working on that as well. Thanks very much, Ken. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Joe.
May I speak now? I have some 3 things to say. Ken, when you were describing how the supermajority just is DeSantis's handmaid, is for sure. And even though a lot of it was unconstitutional and is going to courts, what it has done, and I'm sure it was part of it, it has created chaos, confusion, and most of all, fear. People just don't know where and what's coming for their basic needs. The other thing is Rubio has gotten $3 million from the NRA. And another point which you have made, I want to underscore, when you talk to people, maybe MPAs or people who are confused, the best thing is not to go straight to an issue, but to speak to the values and then go to the specifics. That might work better.
Yeah,
and I think the door-to-door, face-to-face, which is, I know what Michael does and I do with my precincts, is what's going to work, and having the conversations and beginning yesterday. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hello?
Is that Betsy?
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to get.
Go ahead.
so that- Okay, one of the things I wanted to say is I was texting with Nikki yesterday. And one of the things that wasn't discussed tonight, but I think it's really important, is a way into our young people. Because as you know, the young Dems of the past in the colleges are no longer allowed to have a program such as. So she is forming a council, and she's also going to have an overseer, a paid position over the 12 members of the council. So she is aware, because there was the chair from Wisconsin was on the other day and explaining as one of the reasons Wisconsin won was the influx of the young voters. And we have a much better chance with them than the Republicans. So I think that that's an important consideration. The other thing is that there is going to be there's a new organization, I think it's new, that's talking about Go and Run. And what it's trying to do is get people, especially the young people, to consider the possibility of running. And I think that we need to encourage people who have the talent and the initiative. Maybe they don't have all the money, you know what I'm saying, that they're sometimes discouraged before they get started. So I think we need to find quality candidates, and we need to find people who are espousing, I think Arlene mentioned, the values as opposed to just, the bullet points of stuff and policy, because people aren't voting on policy. They're voting, Joe Biden was right that democracy was at stake, and that's what people voted for.
Yeah, that's a good point, Betsy. The bad news is the kids ain't listening to us. The good news is they're doing it on their own.
That's why she's having the kids within the environment recruit other kids to build a platform.
My TikTok handle was Ken for Florida, and during the race, I had more followers than any politician in the country, elected or candidate, except for Bernie Sanders. He was the only politician that had more TikTok followers than I, but it was the kids. Yeah. And they were very active and very knowledgeable. So yeah, that's a great point, Betsy. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right.
Maybe if I could make one more comment.
Sure.
If people know people, we are at the end of the schedule, but the Poor People's Campaign with Reverend William Barber Jr. is going to be having a rally next weekend in Tallahassee. free buses are available. If you contact me, in fact, even Kings Point, we're gonna have a bus stop at our place to pick people up. So it's a free bus. All you have to do is maybe pay for your breakfast and maybe a couple of meals. If you bring your own, then so be it. But the people can say they want to be active, and when we want to give them the opportunity to, to be active. And it's a very worthwhile event.
Right.
Betsy, I signed up for that to get the bus at West Palm Beach. Is that the one you're referring to, or is there another bus?
There's multiple, that we needed a bus closer to us because our people couldn't get to West
And
Palm.
you need 40, right?
We don't need 40 now. They're gonna have a special stop for Kings Point. We have enough people.
Maybe I can join your bus
That would
instead.
be, sure, we love it. We love it.
Okay, thanks, Betsy.
Sure, and if you know people, it's gonna be closing, the bus list is gonna be closing. So if you know anybody that's interested in social action, this is an opportunity.
Can you
And
put your
Reverend
email
Barber-
in?
And Reverend Barber is supposed to be actually attending.
Oh, terrific. Can you put your email in the chat, please?
I don't know how to do that, but
Oh,
somebody can.
okay. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't
I have a
thanks.
question.
By saying that politics has ups and downs, but if you get it right, you can have the world on a string.
Hello?
Yes,
Okay, I have a question. Is, signing people up in the papers, they say that there's not as many Democrats signed up to vote as Republicans, but that doesn't, I don't know if that's true or not.
It's true.
So we have to sign people up to vote.
Somebody wrote an article in the newsletter after the midterms when the red wave was here, but not in the rest of the country. And the title was How the DeSantis Saved Democracy. And it was by attracting all of the lunatics from Pennsylvania and other Midwestern states who were then not available to vote in that state. And that's how John Fetterman became a senator. Because those Pennsylvania woodchucks were down in Florida.
That's fun.
Woodchucks, I like that.
All right, thank you. I'll take.
All right.
Thank you for having me. I gotta run back down to my.
Okay, we got the wrong. Thanks so much.
Thank you for this.
Oh, yeah. You got all right, well, thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next time.
Are we done?
thank you for the opportunity.
Sorry?
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thanks,
Good night,
Joe.
everybody.
Good night.
Michelle. Yeah, we are.
Okay, you have to set it down, so there.
And me.